Alright, today's topic is analyzing perspectives in historical fiction. It's an important concept to understand to become a more critical reader, especially when reading historical fiction. So let's stop and think about it. So the first thing we need to answer is, what is perspective again? I know, we should know this, we've gone over it in class before, but we may need a bit of a reminder. There's the light bulb. Perspective, a specific point of view in judging things or events. Well done. This will be an important definition for us to use moving forward. Let's use that definition to analyze this picture. If perspective is a specific point of view of judging an item, when I stand here, it's clearly a 9. When I stand on the other side, however, my perspective is that it's a 6. It's all depending on where we're standing. In that case, where we stand determines our point of view and our perspective. Alright, now that you know what perspective is, you're thinking, what does this have to do with historical fiction, and how can I apply it to reading my Civil War novel? Well, let's think about it. There are several important things to look at when analyzing perspective. For example, where does a character live? What is their location, their culture? Where do they come from? That can help create perspective. Is the character a female or a male? You can also think about what is the character value? What are their thoughts or opinions? These are all important things to look at in your analysis. To practice analyzing perspectives in literature, let's go back to Pink and Say by Patricia Polacco. What perspectives are in this story? How are those perspectives different? There are two main perspectives in this story to pay attention to. First, there's Pink, a former slave from the South ready to get back into battle. And then we have Say, a white boy from the North that has never seen a black man up close and is afraid to go back to battle. In order to really truly understand the story, it's important to analyze both perspectives. They see things differently, even though they go through the same events. When looking at historical events, it's very important to consider perspective. Take Abraham Lincoln, for example. What would his perspective be on various events? What would he think about slavery? What would his opinions be about keeping the United States together as opposed to letting the South secede? These are important things to think about when talking about perspective. On the opposite end, you have Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederate States. He would have a very different perspective on slavery, the war, the separation of the North and South as two different countries, yet it's important to address both his perspective and Abraham Lincoln's when talking about the Civil War. The same can be said when looking at literature. Let's take a look at this picture and see if we can look at perspective. There are a couple different ways to look at it. On the left, there's an auctioneer. His perspective is that the slave trade is a way to make money, a way to be powerful. On the other side, there's other white men who see slaves as property, things to buy and control. Both different perspectives. We can look at the same image and look at a completely different perspective. Here we can see slave women and children waiting to be sold at auction. Their perspective on slavery is very different. A life of hard work and horror, being torn from their families. Again, same situation, but a very different perspective. Okay, so how can we go back and apply all of this to the story of Pink and Say? Well, the people of the North felt Say was a deserter and should be shot. People in the South saw him as a Union soldier fighting to end slavery, held in a prisoner of war camp and considered to be a hero. So when analyzing perspective in a story, it's important to go beyond point of view. In Pink and Say is the narrator, told from his point of view. But if you really want to analyze the story and look deeper at the text, it's important to recognize and look at all the varying perspectives that are represented. So when applying this to the literature circle book that you read, think about the different perspectives, the North versus the South, soldiers versus generals. Perhaps you have some people that are slaves in the story, or slave owners, children, adults, men, women. These are all important things to look at when analyzing your novel. So, when analyzing perspectives in historical fiction, it's important to look beyond point of view. Look beyond who the narrator is. To truly analyze, you need to think about all the perspectives that are presented, whether or not they're the narrator, and then you can truly analyze the perspective in the novel.
Created using Powtoon.